Great reminder of what the world missed and what so many still miss today, but we didn't miss it. We're here to declare, along with the shepherds and the wise men and all those who gathered over the course of those first couple of years of Jesus' life, that something happened, something changed the world, and we celebrate that at Christmas time. And I don't know about you, but if you're not ready now, it's probably too late. How many of you went to the store today? Anybody in the room went to the store today? So confession, as I was coming into service this afternoon, I had to go by Walmart for one more thing because I realized there was something important that I had forgotten. No, it wasn't for my wife. But when I was there, it was utter chaos. There was pandemonium. I mean, it was all the sounds of Christmas. Children screaming, mothers yelling, dads grumping around. You know, it was all the things that you look at and you see the chaos and the busyness and you think, this is exactly the kind of world Jesus came into. He came into the chaos and the disruption of our world to bring his peace, his hope, his joy, and his love. And that's what we celebrate tonight. You know, we celebrate by giving gifts, which I think is good. It's a good tradition. We do it at my house. But what you may not know is that last year, 2023, the statistics came out, the average American spent $1,652 on Christmas gifts. Can you believe that? Now, if you're like me sitting there thinking, I didn't spend that much, that just means the person behind you or in front of you spent more than that. That's what that means when you get an average. Now, let me put it in perspective for you. So last Christmas, the holiday season, Americans spent $966 billion with a B dollars. $966 billion. Can you imagine? People have said it was the most expensive Christmas ever, but they were wrong because there was a much more expensive Christmas. And they're not just wrong because there was previously a higher priced Christmas. My prayer is that after what I share with you tonight, the most expensive Christmas is yet to happen. Because I happen to know that I have the most expensive Christmas present in the world in these boxes. And I'm going to need your help to open them so that we can share this most expensive Christmas together. All right, so let's see here. Can you help with that? Oh, I see how that is. The sister, you got to hold on to it. I'm going to try to pull it, but you just keep it, okay? Fight for that present. Fight for that present. All right, let's see here. All right, here. See, give one to you because you're looking kind of grumpy, and it'll make sense when I talk about it in a minute. Okay. All right. All right, very good. Okay, very good, very good. We're doing all right? Everybody doing okay? I nearly strangled somebody in the earlier service. Okay, all right, very good. Now, the reason that I would say that last year was not the most expensive Christmas ever is because you have to know what a present is, what a gift is. A gift is something that doesn't have any strings attached, right? If it's got strings attached, it's not really a gift. In fact, there is a code in the IRS that talks about this. And it says if you get anything in return, it's not actually a gift, and it affects how you pay your taxes. But here's what I know about Christmas. When we give gifts out, there are usually strings attached. And there are at least 5 strings that we attach. One string is the string of guilt. Now, you know about this one, right? Somebody got you something last year and you didn't get them anything and you felt bad. Or, come on, all you husbands, there are certain gifts we give our wives because we did something and we're in trouble and we just feel a little good. We give them a gift, right? There's a string attached. That's the string of guilt. Or maybe it's this string. The string of obligation. You know this string? Like, I've got to get something for my uncle. I've got to get something for my nephew. I've got to get something for that coworker. This gift of obligation. This is the string of obligation. I'm obligated to do it. This is one of my favorite strings here. This is the string that says, I'm going to give this gift because I'm hoping to get something in return, right? Come on, y'all have given that gift away with that string attached. I know you have. And then there's this string. This string is the string of cultural pressure. It's Christmas time, for goodness sake, and we're supposed to give Christmas. I mean, the pastor said they spent $652 each last year. How much did we spend? We got to catch up. The string of cultural pressure. Or this string, which is the string of pride, that I'm going to give this gift because I want to look good. I want to outdo my in-laws. I want to outdo some other people. I want to give something good. So we have all these strings. Now, the reason that we did not really give $1,652 worth of gifts away is because they weren't all gifts, because there were strings attached. But what I want to talk to you today is about the most expensive Christmas ever, which is a Christmas where God gave us the gift of his Son. And when he gave us that gift, there had been all kinds of laws before. The Ten Commandments, the hundreds and hundreds of laws in the Old Testament that you had to keep. And somebody was always keeping score. Maybe you grew up in a house like this. Somebody's always keeping score. You know, there is the story about some elf that, he's checking his list. You know that story? Put a naughty list and a good list. That's how we sort of think about God a lot of times. But at Christmas time, the very first Christmas, God gave us the gift of Jesus. And he said there are no strings attached to that gift. It was truly a gift that was for everyone. Didn't matter what you'd done, where you'd been. Didn't matter if you'd followed the law or not. God gave us the gift of his Son, Jesus, free and clear. Now, I'm going to ask you if you have a gift to come up because I need you to help me with something. So come on up here. Because this is the most expensive gift. This is the most expensive gift. And because it was given to us, I'm going to challenge you this Christmas to give it away. So go ahead and open your gift and take out what's in it. Try not to trip on the strings. That happened in the first service too. It's utter chaos in here. All right, so we got some letters here. Let's see if we can figure out what the most expensive Christmas present is. C-R-E-G-A. Can anybody unscramble that for me and tell me what that spells? Grace. Can y'all arrange yourselves so that it says... G-R... Come on down here. C right here. All right. The most expensive gift that was ever given to the world is the gift of grace. In fact, the Bible says this, for it is by grace you have been saved through faith. And this is not of yourself, of your own doing. It is what's that next word? Gift of God, not by works, so that no one can boast. The most expensive gift ever given was grace. Will you give my helpers a round of applause? Thank you all. Good job. You can keep the letters. You can leave the boxes. Keep the letter and leave the box. Yeah. If you want the box, Caleb, you can take it. It's fine. He's probably got a present to wrap later and he needs it. Now here's why this is so important at Christmas time. Because at Christmas time, as we're doing all this gift giving, and as we're celebrating the birth of Jesus, it's easy for us to forget what it's really all about. That Jesus came into the world, and yes, he was born as a baby, the most vulnerable, helpless form of a human there is, an embryo, and then was born, and that's what we talk about at Christmas. But that baby grew. In fact, Esther's been helping us through the entire Advent season painting this picture, and she's been painting two different scenes. One of the shepherds and Mary and Joseph with the manger and the baby Jesus, and then the other about 2 years later when the wise men showed up and Mary and Joseph were in a house and Jesus was about 2 years old, and Jesus would continue to grow and he would become a man, and that man would live a sinless life, and he would die a sacrificial death on the cross where his grace would forever be given as a gift with his arms open wide to all who would receive it. Gifts that are given with strings attached are no gifts at all, and God gave us Jesus and there were no strings attached. Here is the problem. If you and I give gifts and we cut the strings on those gifts, Christmas is going to get a lot more expensive because it costs us a lot more to give away grace than it does to give anything that you're going to buy online or go to a store to buy. See, if I cut the strings to the gifts, then I can't be sure that I will get anything in return. What if that person doesn't appreciate it? What if that person takes advantage of me again? What if that person thinks I approve of the choices that they have made? What if that person What if that person doesn't appreciate me? What if that person never says I'm sorry? What if that person continues to live the way they're living and treat me the way they treat me? That's an expensive gift to give. When you cut the strings and you give the gift of grace, it will cost you something. See, we give gifts at Christmas because the most expensive gift that the world has ever known was given on that very first Christmas. And it was a gift with no strings attached. It was the gift of God himself giving us grace and love that we didn't deserve. John 3:16 says, "For God so loved the world that," say it with me, he gave his one and only Son. He gave him with no strings attached. Christmas is the celebration of God introducing grace to the world. The world had never known grace before. Before Jesus, all there was the law. All there was right and wrong, and you better be right, and might is always right. And Jesus came along and proved that God's grace is the most powerful thing on earth. Grace is what was missing. Grace is what's missing in many of our homes, and grace is what's missing in much of our world. Grace is what's missing in our politics. Grace is what's missing in marriages. Grace is what's missing with parents and children who are having a difficult time. Grace is the missing ingredient, and grace is the most expensive thing that we can give. God changed the rules when he gave Jesus to us. Our relationship with him was not going to be based on rules. It was not going to be based on cause and effect. It was only going to be based on the fact that he would so love us that he would give us what we least deserved. He would give us Jesus. And so this brings us to the most important question you're going to hear this Christmas. And that is this: what is a forgiven, unconditionally loved, accepted, grace-covered person to do with all the unlovable, ungraceful, unforgivable, unacceptable people in their lives? What are you, if you are somebody who has received the gift of Jesus, you are unconditionally loved, you are accepted, you have been grace covered. What are you to do with all the people in your life who are not lovable, who are not full of grace, who are not forgiving, who are not accepting? What are you to do with them? See, we don't really want to think about that, do we? We much prefer to think about grace that's being extended to us. We much prefer to think at Christmas time about what God gave us in Jesus, not in turn what we should be doing for others and what we should ourselves be giving away as a reflection of what God gave us. I love God's unconditional love for me, but don't ask me to love my ex. Don't ask me to love my business partner who cheated me. Don't ask me to love the person who abused me, the person who lied about me, the person who took advantage of me. Don't ask me to love those people, because those are not the kind of people I want to love. Because it would cost me something to love them. It would cost me extending grace to them. See, we're hesitant to do unto others what's been done unto us. This is why just before Jesus died, Jesus gathered all his disciples together. And he was going to give them one last command. And he said it was a new command, but it didn't sound very new. So in John 13:34, he said, "A new command I give to you, love one another." And I'm sure the disciples thought, check, we got that. Jesus, you've said that before. You've said that a lot before. Love one another. And the truth of the matter is, I'm okay with loving one another as long as I get to decide who the one another's are. How about you? Right? I mean, if I get to pick the one another's, it's easy, because I'm going to pick the people who love me back. I'm going to pick my family. I'm going to pick my friends. I'm going to pick some of my coworkers. Right? It's easy. It's easy to love those people. But the truth of the matter is, when Jesus said you are to love one another, we don't get to choose who the one another's are. Because we wouldn't need it to be a commandment if we were going to be able to choose ourselves who we were going to love. Jesus commanded us to love one another because he knew we wouldn't do it naturally. And then he goes on and he defines the love. And he says this: as I have loved you, so you also must love one another. So, as I have loved you. Matthew, remember when you were a tax collector? You betrayed your friends, your family, your whole nation, and you worked for the Roman Empire, and everybody ignored you, everybody pretended like you were dead, and I called you to be my disciple. Do you remember that, Matthew? Yeah, I want you to love people like that, Matthew. Judas, none of these people know this yet. Nobody knows this, but you're going to betray me, and I know it, and you know it, and I'm going to wash your feet anyway. I want you to love people like that. Peter, you're going to deny me 3 times, and I'm going to love you anyway. And I want you to love people like that. People who betray you, people who deny you, people who abuse you, people who didn't live the right lives. As I have loved you, so you, and here's the word, so you must love one another. Must is an emphatic word here. I never had to tell my kids they must eat their dessert. Did you? Did anybody have to tell you you must eat your dessert? Nobody has to tell us that we must do that. We will do that naturally. Why did Jesus say you must love one another? Because he knew it wasn't going to be easy. He knew it wasn't going to come natural. He knew we would choose not to do it because he knew the cost, because he himself was going to pay the cost. And then he said this, by this, all people will know that you're my disciples, if you have love for one another. By this. By this. Not by your religious credentials, not by how often you go to church, not by how much money you give to charity, not by any of that. By how you love one another. See, when the world sees me love people who love me back, that doesn't mean anything to them. Everybody does that. Everybody loves people who love them back. But when I give the expensive gift of grace, when I give the gift that cost everything, people take notice. People step back in awe. They wonder where that kind of love comes from, where that kind of grace comes from. And I will tell you, it is impossible to demonstrate that kind of love. It is impossible to have that kind of grace unless you have first received it as God has given it to you freely in Jesus Christ. It's like my professor in one of my schools, his son was murdered in a convenience store. And he and his wife began to visit the murderer in prison every month. They adopted him as their own son. They loved him. And everybody thought, have you lost your mind? Who does that? Who shows love and grace to someone who would kill your son? Grace does that. Grace costs something. It's like the woman I knew whose mother had abandoned her when she was a child. And as the woman aged and she was finding herself in a difficult situation, she needed help, this woman stepped in and helped care for her mother in her dying days, even though the mother had abandoned her when she was a girl. Who does that? Who does that? I'll tell you who does that. Somebody whose life has been transformed by the grace of Jesus Christ. Somebody who has themselves received the most expensive gift that they could possibly ever be given, and then they overflow with that grace in the life of other people. Jesus tells you, you must extend to others what I've extended to you. Those who don't deserve it, just like you didn't deserve it. Those who won't acknowledge it, just like many of you didn't acknowledge it for a long time. Those who will take advantage of your grace, as you have taken advantage of God's grace time and time again. And here's the thing, even if you are here tonight and you are not a follower of Jesus, you're not a Christian, something in this rings true to you. Something in this caused you to take notice, because you would say, if I would see people doing that, then maybe I would believe. Maybe I would believe in the power of God to extend grace to me through Jesus Christ if I saw it in somebody else, which is why for those of us who are followers of Jesus, it is so important that the world see this gift, not just as we sing Christmas carols or we come together and we put our nativity scenes out or we paint beautiful paintings, but as we live our lives overflowing with the grace of Jesus, a grace that is in love that is extended to people who don't deserve it, just like we didn't deserve it. What if we made this 2024 the most expensive Christmas ever by giving the most costly gift known to man, by extending grace to people who don't deserve it? See, other gifts may just be obligations. We have to give one in order to get even. But somewhere in your world, someone needs to get this expensive gift from you. Someone who doesn't deserve exactly what they need. And my guess is that person may have already come to your mind. There's already somebody who's come to your mind. This Christmas, God may be calling you to give the most expensive gift you can give to that person, the gift of forgiveness, the gift of grace, the gift of love. And let me warn you, it's an expensive gift. It's going to cost you time. It's going to cost you pride. And it's going to cost you some emotions. And the closer you get to doing it, the stronger the emotions are going to get. Because you're going to think they won't appreciate it. They don't deserve it. They'll take advantage of it. But you need to remember that grace cost your Heavenly Father His Son, and it's going to cost you something too. Where in your world right now is someone who needs from you exactly what they don't deserve? Where is there an opportunity to extend grace that will take someone by surprise, that will take their breath away, and that people cannot explain except for the fact that you have received the grace of Jesus Christ in your life? Where must you love one another? I didn't say, where are you going to love those who love you? But where must you love one another? Those people that aren't easy to love, that you don't want to love. And I know what you might be thinking. But if I extend grace to her, I'm afraid that she might. If I extend grace to him, I'm afraid that he will. And all my excuses when I think about this start with, but he, but she. But as Christians, we need to remember this. But God demonstrated his own love for us in this, that while we were still sinning, Christ died for us. But God. We're afraid because we know it's going to cost us something. This is why Jesus said, you must do it. Some of you have been dreading Christmas, not because it's expensive, but because you knew that you'd have to spend time with someone who needs exactly what they don't deserve. Do you know what your family wants from you this Christmas? It's nothing that you can put under a tree or put in a stocking. What they want from you is unconditional love and acceptance. And the only way you can give that to them is to receive it from Jesus. And I know you might be thinking, Gary, you are asking too much. You don't know my story. And I would say, I don't know your story. I don't. And I just also remind you, it's not me asking. It's Jesus asking. It is he who gave everything up for you so that you could experience the grace and mercy of our loving Father. See, it's ironic to me that so often we miss the opportunity to personify the grace of God found in Jesus at the very time of year that we celebrate his birth. This Christmas, somebody needs a hug. Somebody needs your presence. Somebody needs you to listen again and again. Someone needs you to pull them aside and say, let's make this right. Someone needs for you to say, I'm sorry. Someone needs for you to say, I forgive you. And I got to give you a warning. You may do this, and it might not change them. In fact, it might not even go very well. And then you'll be mad at me the rest of the holiday season. But here's what I do know. It might not change them, but God will use it to change you. God will use it to peel one more layer of ungrace off of you. And he will slowly be conforming you into the image of his Son, Jesus. So, we're only left with this one question this Christmas. How does a forgiven, unconditionally loved, accepted person respond to the unlovable, ungraceful, unforgiving people in their lives? And the answer is by giving them what God has given me. The most expensive Christmas gift of all, the gift of grace. And when you give that gift away, you are proclaiming the Christmas story as people receive from you what they don't deserve, just like we receive from God the very thing we don't deserve. I'm going to ask you at this time to prepare to take communion. And if you didn't receive communion kit as you came in, if you'll raise your hand, we've got some people who pass those out. And for some of you who maybe are new to Aspire, you think, wait a minute, we went from Christmas to Easter, Good Friday, really fast. But the reason we do this is because we're reminded that at Christmas time, Jesus came to give his life. See, the grace that God gave us wasn't grace that was only found in a manger. The highest expression of God's grace was Jesus on the cross, where he spread his arms, and all who would believe him and all who would receive him are welcome to receive his grace. You say, I don't deserve it. None of us do. None of us do. That's why it's called grace. And so on the night that Jesus gave that command that they should love one another, he was arrested. And shortly after that, he was executed. But before all of that happened, he told his disciples about it in the form of the Passover meal. And in the Passover meal, they would always eat some unleavened bread. And so if you'll peel off the one layer there, there's a little wafer there. And Jesus took that bread and he said to them, this is my body that's broken for you. And he took the bread and he broke it apart. And he passed it among the disciples. And he said, when you eat this, I want you to remember that my body was broken for you. So tonight, as we share this bread together, may we remember the body of Christ broken for us. And then Jesus took the cup and he said, this wine represents my blood that's going to be poured out for you. A blood that would be poured out and that would flow down Calvary across 2,000 years right to where we sit today. And the blood would wipe away the sins of the world. As often as you do this in remembrance of me, the blood of Christ poured out for us. Will you join me as we pray? John started telling his gospel, his version of the story of Jesus, with the words that the Word became flesh and made his dwelling among us. And we have seen his glory, the glory of the only begotten Son of God, full of grace and truth. He said that light has come into the world. In the midst of the darkness, God said, let there be light. And Jesus was born. And that light was the light of grace and love and mercy like the world had never known before. And so on Christmas, as we light the Christ candle and as we sing the songs about Jesus, we hope to light a spark inside of us, a spark that will turn into a flame that as we go out of these doors into a very dark world, that we can carry the light of Jesus with us, that we, Jesus said, are the light of the world. And we've got to let our light shine. And so as we end this service together, we'll do it in a traditional way of singing together and of lighting our candles. And as the light is passed around the room and as you receive the light from one another, it's a reminder of how the gospel is spread from one person to another person until the darkness is no more. So this Christmas, may we light the light of Jesus in our hearts, and may he shine through our families, through our church, and through the community until all the world sees the light and love of God.